and his staff at Chazaq, all of you who came. I appreciate the opportunity to address Chazaq. It's Kishmai Kenhu. It's a tremendous strength, not only to people who need kiruv. We all need kiruv. I am a Talmud of Yeshiva Tervadas, and the great Rosh Yeshiva, who I was under most of my years, was Rav SHIUR Zichrono Livracha. He was known as the first American Godel. And while I was a Beis Medrash Bachur, the organization called JEP, Jewish Education Program, began at that time. And Yeshiva Tervadas gave them an office to be able to run their organization out of an office in our building. And in addition to that, Rav SHIUR Zichrono Livracha spoke to us, the whole Beis Medrash, about giving some time for the program to be makar of public school children. And when encouraging us, so he's speaking to us that as Bachurim, we don't have money to give meiser from. Any spending money our parents give us, they already took meiser from it. And they're giving it to us that we should be able to buy ourselves something. They're not interested that we should give meiser again, from the money they give us. But he said a yeshiva bachur could give meiser from his time. And he encouraged us to participate in the JEP programs. And then the Rosh Yeshiva said as follows: but don't just interest yourself in kiruv rechoikim, in bringing people who are distant from Hashem close to Hashem. Kiruv kroivim is equally important. He said the bachur sitting right next to you also needs kiruv. You can give him time. Excuse me. Help him learn better. Help him understand the Gemara better. So Chazaq is a chizuk, I think, for everybody. It's not only an organization of kiruv rechoikim, but I think that we are zoichet to a lot of kiruv kroivim. And Chanukah is a Yom Tov that all of us, all of Klal Yisrael, can become a kuruv closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As an introduction, I'm just going to mention a thought from the Nesiv Shalom, Zichrono Livracha. One of the inyonim, one of the ideas that the Yevonim had among their many decrees was kisvu lechem al karnei hashoyer, right on the horns of an ox. Shein lechem chelek be'elokei Yisrael, that you have no part in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The idea was we should see this writing. A person becomes what we eat. Has a big effect on us. You have to be so careful with the hechsher and the food is kosher. Otherwise it clogs this spiritual system. What we read, what we listen to, the music we listen to has a tremendous effect on our spiritual system. Everything has an effect. The sviva, just the atmosphere alone. I told the Bachram this morning a true story that well, now he's a married man, but at that time he was a Bachar in Lander College. He used to come to speak to me every now and then during their lunch break. And one day he asked me if I could explain the following story to him. This fellow is about tshuva, the only observant person in his whole family. And he was a good Ben Torah. But his beginnings were without Torah altogether. He had a doctor's appointment in mid-Manhattan, a block away from Madison Square Garden. Excuse me, I'm sorry. He left the doctor's office to go back to the subway to get back to Lander College, to the Beis Medrash, and he passed by a stand where they were selling DVDs of movies, movies from the theater. And he recognized a good number of movies that he had seen before he became a Ben Torah. And the Yetzer Hara got the better of him. He said, they weren't so bad. What happens if I would see it now? It wouldn't really hurt. And he bought 3 of these discs to take back with himself and to watch. Thank you very much. And to watch the film. Thanks. He said to me that as the train came closer, as the subway train came closer to Kew Gardens Hills, he started to feel uncomfortable that he bought these films. And he got out of the train station and he was walking towards the yeshiva, and he passed by one of these large, attractive, green, round canisters for garbage that they have here in the neighborhood. And he took out all 3 discs and dropped them in the garbage pail. He paid for them. So he was giving up the money that he paid for them. He dropped them in the garbage pail. He said, what happened? He asked me. I said, it's very posh. It's Sevivo. The atmosphere we are in has a tremendous effect on us. You were in mid-Manhattan. The theater center of the world is Manhattan. I said, Mitzrayim was one big Times Square. But you weren't far away on 34th Street near Madison Square Garden. So you saw these discs on sale, the Yetzer Hara, because the Sviva is pulsing with impurity. It's pulsing with it. You bought it. The closer you came to such a neighborhood that once upon a time had one theater, now it has none. The one on Main Street is closed as far as the theater is concerned. So you came to closer and closer to a pure atmosphere. It started to burn in your pocket. You felt uncomfortable with these films. By the time you came close to the yeshiva building, you just dumped it in the garbage pail. The vibrations of the Kedusha, everything affects us. The neshama up here, the breath of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is very sensitive. And it's affected either upward or chas v'shalom downward by everything that we do. So among the decrees of the Greeks was to write on the horns of an ox that we have no part in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why the horns of an ox? There are two reasons. One is, probably more than two, but two that I've seen, that we were farmers in Eretz Yisrael. And we see in the Gemara, what animal pulled the plow? The oxen pulled the plow. So all day long, while we'd work, we'd see that statement, Ein lonu chelik b'lekei Yisrael. We have no part, or Ein lochem is the lashon they used. You have no part in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Reading things that are negative, it's a lav in the Torah. We can't read things that make our mind impure. That was one shot. We were farmers, and we'd see it all day on the oxen that we used. But of Kalman Krohn, Zechrono Levracha, Maggid Shir in Lakewood, a brother to Yibodel Chaim Tovim, Rabbi Pesach Krohn here in Kew Gardens, he was a murdik mechanech, and he said a different pshat. He said in the days of the Greeks, so many years ago, they didn't have the Even Flow baby bottle company to make plastic and glass baby bottles. So what they do with a child who needed a bottle to drink from, they took the horn of an ox. It's just the right size. And they would hollow out the horn and drill a small hole in the bottom, just enough for the baby to suck the milk out of. And they knew that our chinuch starts with the baby even before the baby's born. The mother that's carrying the child is so careful to play only good music around herself, because it has an effect. There's a child developing. And then when the baby is born, how many parents they put in cards that they can buy in the Sfarim store with different Shemus of Hashem and different things that will... The baby doesn't understand anything when it's newborn. But we believe the hashpah is there. If you go to Target or Walmart, you could buy a... the thing that turns and there's music that's playing. There's but not a CD player. No, the carousel that you attach to the crib, and it plays music, and the child sees colors. But in the Sfarim stores, they sell it with Jewish music, and with, instead of pictures of Disney characters, they have mitzvahs, colorful mitzvahs on the picture. Or I've seen parents who put pictures of Gedolim on the carousel that turns around over the crib. But the idea is, we know that chinuch starts when the baby's a baby. And it's sensitive. So they've said, we want on the baby bottles the words, She'ein lechem chelik b'lekei Yisrael. It's interesting that the Medrash in Bereshis and Lech Lecha, that speaks about the four Galuyos, so it says that in those psukim, when it says choshech, darkness, that represents the Golus of Greece, of Yavon. They wanted to make our sight dark. They didn't want us to see the light of Torah. They weren't against our living. It wasn't like Haman or Hitler, Yamach Shemam, that they wanted to kill every Jew in the world. They hated Jews. Well, like these people today who will protest in honor of barbaric murderers. We all wonder, if it happened to them, to their families, would they still be all in favor of these people? Well, of course not. But halacha biyadua she'esav soinei liYaakov. Esav is an enemy of Yaakov, and that's the way it is. And the Zohar Kodesh says, and we learned it this week in yeshiva in Terma Devaira, in the dreams that Nebuchadnezzar had about the different exiles of Klal Yisrael. So he dreamed about the statue of a man, and the head was gold, which represented himself, Nebuchadnezzar, all the way till the feet. The feet were a combination of steel and pottery and porcelain. And in the end of the dream, a rock came and smashed the whole statue, but crumbled the porcelain to sand, to dust. The combination of steel and porcelain, the Mefarshim explained, was the final Golus, Edom and Yishmael. But the Zohar says that in the end of Golus Edom, the world power of Edom will disappear, which it did. Russia, the Red Country, fell apart in the 1980s, and the reins would be given over to Yishmael. They would end the Golus, but they will crumble to dust in the end. That was the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. But Lamaisa, we're living through it, and we see it, and it will happen. But the Choshech, the darkness that it says in the Medrash, that's always Yavon, because they didn't want to kill us. They wanted to pollute the Yiddishkeit. They didn't go to war against us. We started the war. The 13 Chashmonoim, who saw that the Jews were assimilating with the Greeks by the droves. The war was 13 Chashmonoim against an army of Greeks and Jews who assimilated and were against their own brothers. The guilt of seeing their religious brothers was tremendous. And when a person feels guilt, they want to get rid of the other person. It's like Terach before he did tshuva. And he comes home, and Avraham Avinu proves to him that the idols have no power. He was so frustrated. So what do you do when you're frustrated and you don't want to admit you're wrong? What does a parent do? Get rid of the kid. Get rid of the kid. Not get rid of the thing that you have wrong in the house or whatever it is. You can't be in this house. You're telling me what to do. So he gave him to Nimrod. So Nimrod tried his best to convince Avraham Avinu about Avodah Zarah. But everything that Nimrod said, Avraham had a response. And now Nimrod was frustrated. He was proven wrong. And if you don't want to admit you're wrong when you are actually wrong, what do we do? Get rid of the person, throws him into the fire. That's what he does. He throws the person into the fire. So the only time they wanted to kill us is when they saw we didn't listen to their decrees. We wouldn't let them pollute our Yiddishkeit. They wanted us not to have a bris milah. They said, what do you mean your body is different than the body of anybody else? We're all the same. Shabbos, no Shabbos. There's no day of the week that's different. Every day is the same. There's no holiness. The body is not holy. The only thing the body is good for is beauty. They idolized the beauty. They exploited the body, like it's done since the beginning of the movie industry. It's exploiting the body. Today, in the last few decades, it's exploiting violence as well. But there was a time that even the Messiah were not so violent, and they wouldn't let such films be aired. But today, it's either immorality or violence that entertains the people. In the best, I mean, what are the cartoons all about? Different characters beating each other up. That's what it's about. Constantly. But we are a very refined and people who don't appreciate violence, don't want violence. And that frustrated them. So their goal was no Rosh Chodesh, no holidays. Because every day is the same, everybody is the same, every person is the same, just have a good time. That was Yavon. Yet the only thing the Medrash mentions is this. The Medrash only mentions when it says that Yavon, Greece, was the exile that darkened our sight. It says, because they told us to write on the horn of an ox, Ein lechem chelek b'elokei Yisrael. Why doesn't the Medrash list taking away Rosh Chodesh, taking away Shabbos, taking away Bris Milah? Because the ultimate goal of Shabbos and Bris Milah and Chodesh is really Uvoy Sidbuk, to be attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the goal of every Jew, to be attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need our tefillin, He doesn't need our Shabbos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need anything. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us these mitzvahs so we could be attached to Him. Rav Eliyahu Dessler, in Michtam Eliyahu, in Kuntras HaChesed, in his Kuntras about kindness. So he writes there, the word ahava, love, comes from the root word have, to give. The more you give, the more you love. A person that's a big taker doesn't develop love, he'll use people. He'll take more and more. He'll say thank you. He'll appreciate. Will not develop love. When a person invests in someone else or in something, then they get a love for it. A person that puts himself into a moisad, into an organization, they really feel an attachment. A person that puts himself into his car and is always polishing it and puts his quadraphonic stereo into the trunk and lives in it, he'll love his car, even though it sounds silly to us. But there are people who might say, I love my car, or I love my house. I enjoy my house, Baruch Hashem, and I appreciate the house. But the word love is powerful. I would never say I love it, an inanimate object. You could love a fellow Jew, you could love Torah, love Hashem, like hate. The hate is also a powerful lashon. It can't be used on unimportant things. But out there in the world, there's a lot of love for unimportant things. There's fasemes. Zichron Livracha says that in Lashon HaKodesh, a lot of words are spelled similarly because they are similar. The Malbim has a whole sefer on it called Shemus HaNerdofim, similar nouns. Why they're similar? L'moshel, I'll give an example of one. That's very understandable. My Rebbe used it. Rebbe Wolfson Shlita. Zmiris, Zemer is a song. Zayin Memresh. Zoymer on Shabbos, one of the 39 malachos that we can't do on Shabbos is pruning. Pruning a tree, pruning a rose bush. You cut down the branches so it grows better next season, right? That's Zoymer. Why are they the same? Because proper music cuts down the barriers between us and Hashem. It brings us closer to Hashem. Improper music builds barriers between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chas v'Shalom. And you can see it in the dancing. More than once I've gone over to a band leader and I said, look what you are doing to these people on the night of a wedding. A wedding is so holy. Look at the dancing. It's like a disco. You're taking all the holiness away. And one time, the fellow changed, pretty recently, less than a year ago. I went to speak to the guy who's doing the sound. I tried for him first because it was so loud. And I tried to tell him, it's not fine, it's so loud. So he handed me a whole plastic case of earplugs. That was his response. So I went over to the singer. And I said, is it possible to sing something Jewish? I know it was Hebrew words he was singing, but it was nothing Jewish, just Hebrew words. The absolute music and dancing and the beat was totally disco. So I said, this is a wedding. It's a Yiddish wedding. It's a holy night. Could you sing something Jewish? And he right away changed the song. And he did. He listened. But at a different time, the band leader said to me, this is what they asked for, the kids. I want them all to hire me for their wedding. He said, so you're willing to cause people to sin so you make money? You're selling your soul to the devil for a $1 bill? You have to tell them, I can't play this music. This is a wedding. It's a wedding. It's a Jewish wedding. That's what the Yevanim wanted to do to us, to pollute the Yiddishkeit. They said, Beis HaMikdash could stay open. The Beis HaMikdash could stay open. But you have to also bring non-kosher animals on the Mizbeach. No problem. You want your daughter to marry a Talmud Chacham? No problem. As long as she first lives with the Gentile governor before she goes to her chuppah, then she can go to her chuppah. It's fine. You can make a Jewish wedding. But first, they wanted to pollute. Nothing holy, nothing pure. That bothered them. They didn't want to kill us. That's why on Purim, Haman wasn't against our Torah at all. That wasn't his problem. He wanted to kill every Jew. So therefore, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the Nes of Purim, part of the celebration, we make a shechianu on the meal, because we got our life back. But by Chanukah, where it wasn't a question of physical life, they didn't want to kill us. We made the war. The Chashmonaim made the war. So therefore, there's no mitzvah to have a Suda. When we have a Suda, Shulchan Aruch says, if you want to make sure it's a Suda's mitzvah, say Dvar Torah, or sing a Jewish song. So it becomes a Suda's mitzvah. But by Purim, just washing and eating is a Suda's mitzvah already. And we hope we say Divrei Torah, but we don't have to. because it was a whole different war. The war of Chanukah, where they wanted to darken our eyes. So instead of mentioning every one of their decrees, individual mitzvahs of Rosh Chodesh, Milah, Shabbos, they're all for the same purpose, to bring us close to Hashem. Love comes from giving. So the more we give, the more we love. Hashem gave us taryag mitzvahs to give Him. That's what Kibbud Av V'Em is about. The Gemara in Kedushin compares Kibbud Av V'Em, honoring a parent, to honoring Hashem. Because parents automatically love their children. They're forever doing for the children. It was a beautiful story, I guess about 60 years ago, when Square Town began. And today's Rebbe, his father's was the Rebbe then. They started with about 30 families in Square Town. And they applied to the federal government for political autonomy. They wanted to have, they do have their own elections, their own mayors, so they can make certain laws that are good for them in Yiddishkeit, in Judaism. So they didn't just get they didn't just get the right to vote and have their own mayor, which they do. Governor Nelson Rockefeller came down to Square Town to get a tour of the town and see what it's like and see if he agrees to give them their own elections and their own mayor. And he was very impressed. And he came in to speak to the Square Rebbe, Zichron Livracha, afterwards. Now, he comes in, and there had to be an interpreter, because that Rebbe did not speak English. He came from Europe, he didn't speak English. So the governor asks the Rebbe, he said, you have a beautiful town here. I'm very willing to give you your own mayor and your own elections. But I have one question for you. Every house has so much land around it. You know, it's close to Monsey, New York, different place, a lot of land around the houses. And all you have around each house and that land is grass and some shrubs, some little green bushes. No landscaping, no layered gardens, no slate rock, no lights shining on the... Why don't you do something about the landscaping? You have the land for it. So the Square Rebbe responded to him. He said, landscaping takes time, planning, effort, money. Did you see our children? Did you see the schools? We put all our effort, all our time, all our planning, all our money into our children. We don't have time and money for landscaping. We don't have it. And to this day, there are now a couple of thousand houses there, probably, and all the same. Grass, little bushes, neat. No problem with the neatness, but no big decorations. Because we put everything in. We love the children. How they love us. So Hashem gave them a mitzvah of Kibbud Av V'Em. They also have to do things for the parents. And the Gemara compares it to honoring Hashem. Hashem doesn't need, the parents don't need the child to bring them this libazut to get up for them. The parents don't need covering. I doubt there's a parent here who feels, I want my child to get up for me. But it's Shulchan Aruch. We have a mitzvah to teach the children that. When we come in from outside, from shopping, or a father from Beis Medrash, or a father from work, or a mother from work, the child has to get up. And we have to teach them that. Because they have to develop a love, which doesn't come from taking. It comes from giving, from doing for someone else. That's when they develop a love. The more a person puts into his Torah, the more he loves the Torah. The more he puts into his davening, he starts to love davening. That's how it works. Some people love food because that's what they put their interest in, and their preparation time in, and their dream in. So it all depends. And that's why the only thing mentioned in the Medrash is right on the horn of an ox. You have no part in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because that was the real goal. That's what they wanted to accomplish. They wanted to take us away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That was their goal. All the other things were a means of stopping us from giving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so that they would break the relationship, because it's uncomfortable for them. Here they're idolizing the body. If you lift weights and you're muscle bound, then you're worth something. If you don't, you're worth nothing. They walked around without their shirts on. Things that is against Shulchan Aruch, Pasha, to walk around like that. When they started having these tight clothing for men, I spoke about it. I still speak about it in Beis Medrash, because there are only two rules in B'chukei Seim Lo Yisei in not following the ways of the Goyim. There are only two rules in the clothing. One is if it's for Avodah Zarah, which almost doesn't exist today. They're not so religious. There's very few clothing for Avodah Zarah. And the second is for pritzus, to create temptation for people. So women always had these laws. You can't uncover your knees, you can't wear something too tight. Men had no problem until about a dozen years ago, when they started making tight pants, tight shirts. I remember the first time I saw it at a wedding. First time I saw it, I really didn't know about the new style. And a former staff member who worked in camp for me came over to say Mazel Tov to me. And I really thought to myself, what a Baal Chesed, what a kind guy. He wants to look like a clown for the chassan, probably to dance later. So a whole night he dressed like a clown to come here already to make Mesameach the chassan, because the suit was so tight you could see the lines pulling when it was buttoned. He wasn't a fat guy, but the suit was very tight and short, not long enough the jacket to really cover what's supposed to be covered. Pants were tight, big bow tie, small brim. I didn't know these things came into style. I wasn't aware until I saw a few people like that. It all came at one time, like it was a sudden change. I said, oh, wait a second. He's not dressed like a clown. That's a style. A lot of guys are dressed like that. And that's when it started. It became, people want to be in style. So they're willing to wear things that are too small and probably uncomfortable. I can't imagine it's easy to sit in pants that are so tight. But if it's the style, it's worth it. It's worth being uncomfortable to be in style. But I spoke about it. That's for preachers. Why do they want us to wear such tight clothing? Men. We should be noticed. People should, to create taiva. That's the whole purpose. That's the purpose of it. That's what they want to do. They want to pollute our Yiddishkeit, and that's the end of Chanukah. They have to be aware of it. So the way the Yevonim, what they do, they broke into the Beis HaMikdash. They made breaks in the walls. They didn't destroy the Beis HaMikdash. They weren't out to do that. Think about that also. Did you ever wonder, the Gemara in Shabbos says that they were metame the oil for the menorah. Isn't that a waste of time for the Yevonim, for the Greeks? They have to open up the jug to be metame the oil. It's not so simple. Why don't you it's porcelain jugs. They weren't steel. Take a little lady's hammer. You're not even a man's hammer. And smash each one. And the oil will run all over the floor, and there'll be no lighting of the menorah. Instead, they were metame the oil. You could light the menorah still. Why'd they do that? Because we don't mind if you light the menorah. But if it's lit with oil that's tameh, it'll give off a negative vibration. It won't make you holy. It'll make you unholy. That was the goal. The goal wasn't to ruin the oil and turn off the menorah. The goal was the menorah should be full of tumah. And Yidden mean very well. They really mean well, whatever they do. I know the people who do this mean to make the mitzvahs fun for the kids. They mean it. They mean very well. They don't mean badly, but they don't realize how holy lighting the menorah is. I went to a Judaica store, not in this neighborhood, and I saw a menorah, a bar with 8 lights and a shamas a little bit higher. Each light is a different Disney character. A menorah, a menorah, a menorah. You're a Kohen Gadol in the Beis HaMikdash when you light a menorah. No, but the children will have fun. They're going to light Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. They're not supposed to have fun lighting a menorah. They're supposed to be regal lighting a menorah. Even a child. It's like a mezuzah. Mezuzah is a mitzvah. I saw in one of the stores a clown mezuzah holder for the children's bedroom. Big ears, a big red nose, big red shoes, and between the chin and the shoes was a lucite belly in which you dropped the mezuzah. So it could be fun to kiss the mezuzah. A mezuzah is not fun. Mitzvahs are not meant to be. They're meant to be regal. It's malchus. The Eibusher says, Melech Malchi Amlochim. We're honoring Hashem, making a mistake. They mean well. All these artists mean well. They don't realize what a mitzvah is. They think it should be fun. The child should light. Tonight you light Minnie and Mickey. And the next night you're going to add Elmer Fudd and Minnie and Mickey. It's going to be like, wow, so much fun. Fun? A menorah? That's not fun. You're like a Kohen Gadol when you like the menorah. The Rebbe always tells us a story, about every year, Rabbi Wolfson, about the Chazaq of Lublin. He was called the Chazaq because he was a seer. He had Ruach HaKodesh. He knew what other people didn't know. And one night to his Chanukah lech came a delegation of 3 people from a neighboring city where they had a masur, a person that told on a Jewish man, gave him over to the government, caused them to be killed. He never created almanos and yisoimim because he got money. The government paid him. He was an evil person. The Gemara is about it in Sanhedrin. What happens to these people? But they didn't know what to do. He didn't listen to the Rabbanim. He hurt the whole community. So after the Rebbe finished his lighting his lech, they gave over the paper with the name of this man, and they told the Rebbe he's a Mosur. The Rebbe should do something about it with his tefillos, with his tremendous powers that he has. He looked at the paper. He said, "This man, he's radiant in all the worlds. He's a holy person. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about." They couldn't believe it. This is the Chazaq. This is the Baruch HaKodesh. And they took the paper back. And they couldn't go home because it was nighttime. You can't travel on dark roads at night. It was, hundreds of years ago. There were no lit up roads. They stayed till the next morning after Shachris. So they went back. They figured they'll try a second time. And they gave him the paper and they told him. He looked at us, oi, this man is unbelievable. He's like a murderer. It's a terrible person. And he took the paper and he put it into the flame of the candle on his table. That's how they read in those days, with a candle. And he said, go home, he will not be a problem anymore. So I said, can I ask the Rebbe a question? He said, sure. Last night we gave the same paper to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said, this person, I don't see what you're talking about. He's radiating in all the worlds. Last night when you gave me that paper, he was lighting his menorah. When the Yid lights the menorah, and when you bend over that menorah, and anybody who's yotzi with your lighting, it could be the rest of the family as well. But when we light that ner in honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because that whole atmosphere of miracles comes down for 8 days again, and this year for 9 days, because the last day, Zos Chanukah, is Friday, and it goes into Shabbos. Zos Chanukah goes into the Shabbos. So my Rebbe always tells us Shabbos welcomes the guest, doesn't push away a Yom Tif. It takes the Yom Tif with it until Motzei Shabbos. But all these days of Chanukah are days that when we light that menorah, we're telling HaKadosh Baruch Hu, really, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have a ner down here, that's the menorah that we are responsible to light for you, and it makes us closer to you. But at the same time, I'm lighting up my neshama up here. I'm doing such a mitzvah. I'm thinking about how close you are to us, what you did for us. So Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam. Hashem's menorah is our neshamas. And that's what we're lighting up. And that's what we do when we light a menorah. And that's why the Chazaq couldn't see negative on this man. That's what we accomplish. A beautiful story that's brought down about the wife of Rabbi Mordechai Finkelman. That she was visiting one Chanukah her own sister, who was a very wealthy woman. Rabbi Mordechai Finkelman was a Rebbe. He didn't have much money. And after Chanukah Lechtzenden, the rich sister saw Rabbi Mordechai's wife crying. So she thought that because she was poor and they were lighting a beautiful silver menorah, that's why her sister was crying. Because she didn't have the gashmias, the material menorah that the sister has. So she said, don't worry, one day you'll also light a beautiful menorah in your house. She said, no, that's not why I'm crying. She said, I'm missing being at home for Chanukah Lecht. We, every year for the menorah, we cut potatoes in half and dig out a little hole for the oil, and each half of a potato, we put out, 9 potatoes, half potatoes, and we lighten those potatoes. She said, that's the menorah that we can afford. But when my husband lights the menorah, I see a light of Gan Eden in the olive oil lights. I feel the kedusha and sweetness of Shabbos in the whole house every night of Chanukah when he lights those lights. I'm missing it. She said, that's all. It's a very simple menorah we have, but the feeling is so special when my husband lights the menorah. And that's why I'm crying, really. You can have all the silver. It's beautiful. I'm not missing the silver. I'm missing that because it depends on the kavanah we have when we light the menorah. And if we realize what we're doing. And my Rebbe taught us that since HaKadosh Baruch Hu took away the Or HaGonus from Gan Eden, and I'll finish in a few moments, Be'ez Hashem. But before Adam and Chava ate from the Eitz Hadas, from the tree of confusion, of an internal Yetzer Hara, they were created with no internal evil inclination. Only a Yetzer Toiv, Adam and Chava. They had an external Yetzer Hara, the Nachash, the snake. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them, don't take in the Yetzer Hara, don't eat from this tree, the Eitz Hadas, Toivara, confusion, good and bad. The fruit of this tree makes you confused inside about Toivara, makes you think that bad is good, and you can do things that you shouldn't do. Don't eat from it. This way you only have Yetzer Hara outside. And they ate from the Eitz Hadas. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, then you have to leave Gan Eden. So, what was Gan Eden? It says in the Medrash, there was an or, such a light that Adam Rishon could be in one place and know what's going on all over the world. Ruach HaKodesh. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's called now the Or HaGanuz, the hidden light. Hashem hid it because evil people could abuse it if they had this power. Where did Hashem hide it? Hashem hid it in the Torah, and that's why tzaddikim who learn Torah a lot are zoicha to Ruach HaKodesh. They could see what nobody else can see. They know what nobody else can know, and we see it to this day. You know, I just read a story last night about Moshe Feinstein, Zichron Livracha, where a couple from Eretz Yisrael, the youngest child was diagnosed with a very bad sickness, and the doctors in Eretz Yisrael said, we don't know this sickness. In America, in such and such a hospital in Upper Manhattan, there are doctors who deal with this. You must go there. And they came in wintertime with all their children because they had no idea how long they'd have to be here. So they enrolled their children in schools here. And they came and they stayed in Monsey, which is not far from the top of Manhattan. And the first Shabbos they were here, first they went to the doctors, and the doctors looked at the tests and checked the girl themselves, and they said, yes, she has this disease, she must have a surgery next week. She must have a surgery. So you'll bring her back, after the weekend. So for Shabbos, one of them had parents, this couple in Borough Park. They were going to head to Borough Park for Shabbos. And they did. But it started to snow. And heavier, and heavier, and heavier. And if their life wasn't hard enough, they got stuck. They couldn't get to Borough Park for Shabbos. They got stuck in the Lower East Side. And it was just less than an hour before Shabbos. So they went into Tiferet Yerushalayim, to Moshe Zichron Livracha's yeshiva. He was alive then. It was a warm place to go into, the husband and wife and all the children. And he made them some tea. It was still before Shabbos, just to warm them up from the trip. It was a long trip, hours in the snow. And the shamus saw him, asked what happened. He told them, he said, you'll still be my guests, come to my apartment, all of you will stay by me. And over Shabbos, he saw Rabbi Moshe. And he asked, maybe he could bring his daughter for a bracha before they leave back to Monsey. So Motzei Shabbos, he was given an audience with Rabbi Moshe. And Rabbi Moshe gave a very warm bracha to the girl. That she should have for Shalema, and he gave a very, very warm bracha. And they went back to Monsey, and then they subsequently went back to the hospital, and the doctor was doing pre-op testing to make sure he knows exactly what he's doing and where he's going and what he has to cut. And he kept going back and back to the previous tests and that day's tests, and he said, this is a miracle. She doesn't have any problem anymore. She doesn't need a surgery. Something happened. I never saw this before. So the man writes, of course, he never saw Moshe Feinstein give a bracha before. And we thought the snowstorm was a headache. It was the biggest blessing we could have gotten. So the Eibishter hid the Or in the Torah always, and in the Ner Chanukah, and in the Ner Shabbos. So I'm not holy enough to feel the Or HaGanuz, but I look at the Ner Shabbos and the Ner Chanukah. The Ner Chanukah, especially the first half hour that it's lit, the first 30 minutes. Ner Chanukah has to be enough oil for 30 minutes. Erev Shabbos, we put enough to go till Seis and then 30 minutes, at least. So my Rebbe taught us to try to stay by the Lecht for the whole 30 minutes. So, when I was a bacher, so it's not a problem. You sing Zmiros, you say some psukim by the Ners for half an hour, and you stay by them. But when you're a parent of young children, they don't have patience for 30 minutes by the Ners, Stamasai. They're just to be there. And now, Baruch Hashem, with grandchildren, same thing. I'm going to tell them to wait 30 minutes till we go to eat latkes, or whatever else that they would like. You can't. Every Yom Tov and Shabbos has to be enjoyable, has to be a pleasure. We would plan the Shabbos through this, with time to play in the middle, so that the children should enjoy. So what I started to do to keep the children by the Lech without them knowing it, was Chanukah geld. I made sure I got a stack of singles, before Chanukah, and I would say, okay, now we're going to ask questions, and for every right answer you get $1. So I keep them every night by the leftovers. We sing songs and ask questions, and they don't even realize that they're 30 minutes looking at the wonderful lecht of Chanukah. And as best as we can light them, like the Rabbi Mordechai's wife said, they had the oil and potatoes, but it was very, very special. So I'm just going to close by explaining what Zois Chanukah is. Mitzvah Hashem, the last day, the first day is Erev Shabbos this week, Thursday night, and the last day is Erev Shabbos next week, the 8th day, 8 days later, and it goes into the Shabbos. But why is it called Zois Chanukah? This is Chanukah, as if it's the whole Chanukah, one day. Did you ever wonder why by the Ashkenazim, I'm not sure what the Sephardi community calls the third meal, but maybe they call it Suda Shlishit, but we call it Shalosh Su'udot, or Shalosh Shudas, slurred, 3 meals. Now in these winter months, could you imagine eating 3 meals just after you had the Suda in the morning? You know, Mincha is only a couple hours after the Suda. How can you call it Shalosh Su'udah, Shalosh Shudas, 3 meals? You can't eat 3 meals on a winter afternoon. We never eat 3 meals for the 3rd meal. It should be called Suda Shlishit, the 3rd meal. But the indication of calling it Shalosh Su'udah is to remind ourselves, by us, B'nai Yisrael, the day starts at night. The first tefillah is Arbit, is Ma'ariv. And the next morning we already have Ma'ariv under our belts and we add Shacharis to it. The holiest tefillah of the day is Mincha, which is the 3rd tefillah. We have already, it's 3 tefillahs together, because the day doesn't, we don't lose Ma'ariv from last night, we don't lose Shacharis. The day gets bigger and bigger as the day goes on. Shabbos is the same way. By the time we're up to Suda Shlishis, it's 3 meals. It's the Kedusha of 3 meals. It's so holy. It's the holiest time of the whole Shabbos. Like Ne'ilah is the holiest tefillah of Yom Kippur, because we have the whole Yom Kippur with us. It's just holier and holier and holier. Every day works that way. That's why Eliyahu Hanavi was answered by Mincha. It's such a holy time. So Chanukah is not one day and one day and one day, no. It's a snowball. We light one lech Thursday night. It's Kaddish. Friday is very holy, but Shabbos, besides being Shabbos, it's 2 lights. It's 3, it's 5. Zois Chanukah. The last day is the whole Chanukah in one big day. All 8 days, so much Kedusha. There's so much to accomplish. It's a time of bracha. Tefillahs are accepted for all different things. It's a time of kapara if a person needs that. It's like another Yom Kippur. I think it's the Basayin who brings it down. The Remes from this week's Parshas Vayeshev. That's the from Yehuda and Tamar. But the Remes is from Parshas Vayigash. Lule Hismamanu. If a person tarried and didn't do what he should do on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur and on Hoshana Rabbah, the Eibush gives him until Zois Chanukah. Zois Chanukah is another day of kapara if a person needs it, and this year it goes till Motzei Shabbos. But whatever it is, with the Iker Mitzvah I saw tonight in Gift World, they're selling the Eretz Yisrael the kind of menorahs now, with all glass on 4 sides and a chimney on top for the heat to go out of, and 9 lights, a Shabbos and 8 lights inside the glass. Because the Iker Mitzvah is to light the menorah in Rishus HaRabim, in the place of the Satan. Our homes are Rishus HaYochid. Every Jewish home is an oasis of Kedusha for the Rabbeinu Shalom, an oasis of Kedusha. That's what a Jewish home is. To run in from the street and have a holy place that the street doesn't come into. But on Hanukkah, we want to show them, you came into our Beis HaMikdash, you polluted the Beis HaMikdash, we can bring our Kedusha into your street, and we're going to be Kaddish even in your street. We can bring our Kedusha, we can walk through the streets and not look on the sides at the billboards. We can bring Kedusha with us wherever we go. That's what Hanukkah wants to show. We could light up in the darkness, like Yaakov Avinu made the tefillah of Ma'ariv for the darkness, a tefillah in the darkness. That's really the lesson of Hanukkah. That Baruch Hashem, we have a neshama that's the Eibishter's menorah. And we light the menorah to remember how much Eibishter loves us. The nisim that he did for us when most of us had assimilated and they came back. Because the Eibishter made a miracle for 13 Chashmei Noyim. For 13 sincere people against tens of thousands and maybe more. But certainly tens of thousands. It's miraculous that we were able to win. And we are going through a war right now. And the Rebbe explained to us, and we should be zoiche, he explained that just like by Midjan, it says elef lamate twice, because the 1,000 went to the battlefield, and keneged that 1,000, for every shevet there were 1,000 davening, that those 1,000 should do well. Elef lamate. So my Rebbe told us the battlefield is right over here in our shul, in our base medrash. We have to have in mind our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, and through our mitzvos and our learning and our chesed, the Eibush is going to do big things for Klal Yisrael across the world. The fact that we see we have no friends, that there are all these demonstrations and the college campuses are rising up, the Eibush wants to show us, you have me. You don't need politicians. You don't need anybody. We are the relationship that's necessary. HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. And hopefully, Bayomim Ha'heim Bazman Hazeh, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought such major nisim in the days of Chanukah Mamish, 13 people against such an army. Hopefully, Bazman Hazeh will be zoiche before Chanukah comes, to Or Chadosh Al Tzion Ta'ir, a brand new light will shine on Yerushalayim, a much bigger light. The Or Hagonas will be given back. V'nizkechulanu, and every Jew in the world, even the 80% who are not religious, who don't know about Hashem, they'll want to know about Hashem, and we'll teach them Mitzvot Hashem. V'nizkechulanu Chazaq, they're going to come. They're going to want to be taught the 80%. Thank you very much for coming and for listening.